Alrighty then. So, the next thing in my list. Again, there was 8 episodes in the series, and I decided that I was also going to do at least 8 major, I'm not going to say plot points, but things they play with that are big enough to be in multiple episodes. So, for this one is the planet Brendok. And yes, I know, I'm doing this before we actually see Brendok in a big way, but I kind of feel that, like, properly going forward with the series, this is an aspect of world building that needs to be understood. Because you, as a GM running the game, need to know what the game world is. You can't just, roll dice to figure out what planet the party landed on. That, I mean, if you're going to do it that way, why bother, writing anything? Anyways, so what is Brendok? Not very well developed. I hate to say that, but it's true. It's really not very well developed. So we have this shot here, which shows that a lot of Brendok is actually scrub grassland. See, they talk about how Brendok used to be lifeless, how in its current state, it does actually have life on it. And from the size of this stand of trees, I figure several years, over a decade, those trees have been growing. You don't see anything on Brendok that looks large. So, the idea that the entire planet's biosphere died and somehow started regrowing a biosphere over 10 years ago, maybe. I honestly think that from a GM perspective, it would be better if you go with the idea that Brendok was never truly lifeless and that it was more that it was unlivable to, humans and other sentient races, because let's face it, Star Wars doesn't really go very far with the idea of proper non-humanoid life forms. They're either humanoid or able to live with humans in the same environment, even if they don't necessarily look like humans, because let's face it, Zabraks have pointy ears and horns and stuff. Anyway, so Brendok was on the Galactic Rim as a mining colony. What exactly they were mining, we don't know. We just know that what is later referred to as the Brendok Fortress was actually a mining base. Exactly what aspect of mining it was doing, what they were mining, we don't know. I'm going to get back into that in more detail, but first I'm going to take a little bit of time to ponder this here, because this is actually one of the biggest establishing shots we get. They really don't have a huge amount of views of Brendok. But we do also get to see this foresty area here, which again, none of these are particularly large trees. They do look like they're probably at least 10 years old, but none of them is, of great size. Again, though, is that this does, however, feel more like an area that has been forested for over 20 years. Also, the whole thing of being lifeless was a throwaway line. It's a major plot point because it's the reason why the Jedi were curious what was up with Brendok and why they were looking around. However, it's not explained. It's just left as a throwaway line, and that's something that, as a GM, you would really need to work with, because the fact that people are going to ask questions. Maybe. You never really know. However, If they were to ask questions, you would need to either make up something on the spot or, actually have an answer prepared ahead of time. And, oh yeah, this is the only form of wildlife we see on the planet. Which does go with the whole idea of massive disaster causing the planet to, generally be crap. We don't really get a whole lot of scenes of these things either. There is, however, also the mention of hunting as a method of acquiring food. So presumably the planet does actually have enough wildlife on it that you could hunt for food. And we're talking about a group of dozens of people doing that. They actually said that there's over 50 witches in the coven. And if they've been hunting for food, that would imply that the forests are actually highly extensive and have a substantial amount of wildlife that we didn't see in the movie. And, okay, I mean, realistically, because the fact that most of the shots of Brendok are either the exterior of the fortress or the interior of the fortress, we don't really have a whole lot of time to look at the ecosystem there. We have all of those shots of the Jedi poking around and collecting botanical samples and stuff. And that's actually where most of the footage of the exterior comes from. That and the whole Bunta tree thing. And the Bunta tree, it's not explained whether this is a species unique to Brendok or not. We know that May used a sample of Bunta tree leaves from this specific tree to make the poison she used to kill Torben. But that's an interesting plot point because of the fact that Darth Venomous / Chimere, he already apparently knew how to make liquid poison out of Bunta extract. Yeah, she just hands him a piece of foliage from the Bunta tree. It's like, oh, you want me to make poison out of that? Okay, sure, no problem. Yep, okay, that's a thing. And then she uses that to kill Torben. So, again, this might be something that people have planted on multiple planets because they have uses for it, but it's not discussed at all. It's like people don't really talk about it as being unique. They just talk about it as being unusual and dangerous, because if you were to just eat one of the leaves raw, apparently it would either seriously harm you or possibly kill you just from eating a leaf. It is actually something that May and Osha talk about in the scene where they are first seen talking to each other. They actually talk about the fact that Osha is under the Bunta tree, and Osha is the only person who likes sitting under the Bunta tree, and that it's potentially deadly if you eat the foliage. Anyway, though, so moving on. The Great Hyperspace Disaster is something that we don't know the extent of how it affected Brendok, because it's barely even mentioned as being part of the story. The actual thing was a starship called the Legacy Run had a collision with another object in hyperspace, broke up, and then the pieces exited hyperspace at, hyperspace velocities and smashed into several planets. apparently including Brendok. Thing is, this actually wasn't a particularly widespread event, because, as mentioned here, evacuation of Hetzel Prime. The majority of it apparently showed up in the Hetzel and Triment systems. And because, like, the bulk of it is the Hetzel system, several moons in the Triment system, and not a whole lot of other places. Why? Because it's a ship. It's not big enough to scatter debris over the entire galaxy. And also, the pieces of the ship were moving in a specific direction and speed. So, you know, unless one of them happens to stay in hyperspace for like 3 weeks after the rest of the ship already exited hyperspace in pieces, it's not actually going to get very far. So again, the disaster had very limited scope. One of the pieces apparently hit Brendok, but yeah, that's literally the only thing we know about it. And now we get to the fortress. So, this is the only artificial structure we see on the planet. It is a very permanent structure that has apparently been here for decades. As mentioned before, we don't really know who built it or what they were mining. We just know that they built it as a mining colony, and that it is apparently in the mouth of an extinct volcano. Why? Good question. We don't know what they're mining, so trying to guess why they would build the mine in the mouth of an extinct volcano is, we don't know. I mean, the whole extinct volcano thing has the possibility of being a reason why there would be unique minerals here that aren't in the surrounding area. And it's possible that they were actually excavating the volcanic chambers under the mountain. But that's mostly guesswork. However, I'm here for guesswork because of the fact that we need to fill in the blanks because of the fact that the TV show didn't really tell us a whole lot about anything. So I did, however, collect a few pictures of the fortress because, as mentioned before, it was a mining facility that was renovated by this coven of 50 plus witches who were living here and have been living here for several years. I mean, this area here is one of those where you see like obvious mechanical stuff that's probably leftovers from the mine, and there's not really a whole lot of indication of which parts are things the witches put here and which parts are actually part of the original mine thing. I mean, this is obviously witch stuff, but it's not really part of the building. It's just decorations or furniture or something. Now, this room, yeah, again, we don't really have a good idea which things were part of the original mine layout, which things the witches added, but this very much feels like an industrial something or other area, vaguely, anyways. Another shot of a different interior space. And here we have the facility from a very similar shot to this one. Except that this is it before the building gets lit on fire, and this is the building after it gets lit on fire. Thanks, May. Anyways, yeah, this is an actual official promo shot they did, and really goes to show you just how extensive the damage to the facility really is. When you compare these two shots, it's because like it has like fire jumping out of what's seemingly almost all of the windows. Really gives you the idea that, yeah, the place is toast. Oh, and it also had what was apparently the base reactor explode. Because again, it's a mining facility built in the Star Wars setting, so they had some sort of a big power plant running the mine, and then that exploded. Because of reasons. So the fortress itself, uh, we don't really know exactly who built it, what they built it out of, what they even built it to do, other than the vague goal of mining. We don't actually know that the mine itself is directly under the fortress even, or whether this is just an ore processing station built in the caldera of a volcano for some reason. But, as a location, the idea is very interesting, because the areas around it, while they do have a rather arid kind of looking um, aesthetic, it's not barren. It does have life on it, and quite a lot of it. So it's not lush and verdant, but it's livable. And, the interior of the mining facility, a lot of things in it are, shall we say, badly uh, maintained, because again, like, the witches who are living here aren't the people who built it. They don't necessarily have the tools or knowledge to maintain things properly, or even know what the heck some of the stuff does. So it's kind of in a state of dilapidation. Mm, it does, however, have things like interior lighting. So you can just like flip a light switch and light up the rooms, or at least most of them, where that still works, I guess. Anyways, yeah, that's about it for this one. Because, like, again, it's like okay. There is one more thing. The Virgins. There is like one scene where we see a group of witches huddled around a hole in the ground, which I somehow don't have a picture of handy, because it's something that literally pops up on screen for a minute or so and is never seen again. And finding pictures of it to prove to be a little more challenging than I thought it would. Ooh. Vergences in the Force are not particularly rare, and the nature of a vergence depends on the individual vergence. Having a vergence being centered around a person is something extremely rare, though, and a lot of vergences are apparently transitory things that come into existence and then kind of, you know, peter out. Like, it's here and then it slowly wanes until it goes back to being normal things. We don't really know about this one, because of the fact that it's entirely possible that the event that made the planet green again might have been a one-off thing, where the place used to have an unusual um, bending of the force, because, like, it's possible that that's the reason why they're there studying things, looking for a vergence, because of the fact that their Jedi trained force senses aren't picking up a vergence, because the vergence is no longer there. And that 8 years ago, something weird happened with the force on this planet, and that was 8 years ago, and it's not there now. Again, it's something that's such a vaguely defined plot aspect that you really, really need to make shit up to actually use it. You can't just use it straight as is, because of the fact that it's too vague as is. And I think that's about that. I might end up doing another one about the whole vergence thing later, but the whole vergence on this planet being the reason why it has life again, we don't know when we don't know when exactly the planet came to have life again. That's another thing. It's like, so 232 BBY. Okay, that is when the hyperspace disaster occurred. So the episode Destiny happens in 148 BBY. And these numbers are counting down. So 148 BBY, that is, several decades after 232. And the witches apparently haven't been living here the entire time. It's possible that this vergence in the Force is what attracted the witches to the planet, and then the witches used it to create Osha and May, and then the vergence in the Force was expended or something. I don't know. Again, guesswork, trying to make logic and sense out of something that didn't have enough of that already. Alrighty then. Well, I guess that's it. See you guys later.